I'd like to order lunch for the next 10 years. Is that possible? On the brink of closing, my family's diner was in a tough spot. The one who placed the order was a woman as beautiful as a model. Faced with this unexpected order, both my parents and I were stunned. Then, the woman who ordered started chuckling at the sight of us. Is 10 years too short? How about 30 years? Seeing her mischievously smiling, I was reminded of an old friend. My name is Michael. This year, I'll turn 29. Currently, I work at my family's diner, run by my dad, mom, and me, a family of 3. We're not rich, but we're happy. Our diner is a local eatery, frequented occasionally by my high school classmates. I grew up in this neighborhood. I attended a local public high school. I wasn't particularly bright, but I spent 3 fulfilling years having fun with my classmates. There was a girl I was interested in. Her name was Emily, and we were in the same class for 3 years. She was slim and pretty, like a model. On the other hand, I wasn't much of a looker. I didn't have enough confidence to pursue someone out of my league. What concerned me was her pale complexion. Emily was popular with the boys. She was respected by the girls, but no one seemed to notice her pallor. But I couldn't bring myself to mention it. In that way, I couldn't take my eyes off her. In high school, we brought our own lunch. My mom always nagged me to eat 3 meals a day, no matter what. Being from a diner family, my lunch was always hearty. It was enough to satisfy any growing boy. However, Emily always skipped lunch. One day, I asked one of her close friends about it. Why doesn't Emily eat her lunch? I somehow felt uneasy asking her directly. Oh, Emily is on diet. She only eats 2 meals a day. It's amazing how thin she is, Emily's friend told me. Why do girls want to be so thin? I couldn't understand. Well, I guess that's just how it is. I was concerned, but that's where I left it. Then, one day something happened. Emily's friend was absent. The friend I usually eat lunch with was called away for a club activity. Emily, as usual, was studying alone during lunchtime while others were spreading out their lunch. Emily, is it okay if I sit here? Curious, I took the seat in front of her. The class was noisy, and no one paid any mind to us. Oh, yeah. Emily replied. Aren't you eating lunch? I heard you were on diet. As I said that, I opened my own lunch. Yes, that's right. But take care not to ruin your health. Everyone says you're slim and praises you, but you look pale. When I said that, Emily stopped what she was doing. Her smile from earlier was gone. Her face was tense, and I froze, wondering if I had said something wrong. No, but I do think you're beautiful. What I meant wasn't that you're unattractive or anything. Sorry, that was a poor choice of words. I really didn't mean any harm. Being on diet is important too. I apologized to her. I realized I had been rude to her. After hearing that, Emily's expression softened a bit. No, it's okay. You were just worried, right? At her smile, I hesitated and then took out sandwiches wrapped in plastic that I had brought separately from my lunch. Yeah, I'm worried. So, this is me being meddlesome. Throw it away if it's a bother. I placed the sandwiches on Emily's desk. No, but really, don't throw it away. It's really good. Try it. I said that and started eating my lunch. Did you know my family runs a diner? A diner? Yeah, the Harrison's Diner, near the station. I'm the son of the diner owners, that's why it's good. As I said that, Emily hesitantly reached for the sandwiches. She took a small bite. For some reason, I felt relieved watching her. As I continued eating my lunch, I heard a sniffle. Emily. When I asked, Emily, with tears in her eyes, muttered, "It's delicious." My heart tightened. I had a feeling that something was up. "If it's okay with you, I can be someone to talk to. There must be things you can tell your friends, right?" At my words, Emily started to speak little by little. "I have a younger brother and sister. They're still little." I listened quietly to her story. "But my father passed away 3 years ago, and now my mom is supporting us all by herself. So, I do the housework and take care of my siblings. Even dropping them off and picking them up from daycare. I also cook the meals." Emily carefully took small bites of the sandwiches I gave her. Tears fell onto the sandwiches. "So, we don't have much money. I can't work because I have to take care of my brother and sister. But even in such a situation, my mom let me continue my studies, so I feel like I have to endure everything." Wiping her tears, Emily said that with a smile. "My dinner is usually leftovers from my brother and sister, and I hardly have time for breakfast, but I have to keep going." After listening quietly, I spoke up. "Come and eat at our place. Bring your brother and sister too." "Thank you, but I can't afford it, and just your thought is enough." Emily, envied by everyone. Thinking she was on diet, what was she really feeling? I had no idea about her situation and carelessly commented on her pale complexion. I never imagined she had such circumstances. I never thought about the happiness of being able to have 3 meals a day. So maybe you're saying that I look pale wasn't completely wrong, but it's for reasons like that, so don't worry about it. Thanks for worrying about me. You're the only one who noticed, Michael. It surprised me." Emily said, smiling. I couldn't smile. "Don't worry about it, that's impossible, of course." After hearing about her situation, I racked my brain, though not the brightest, wondering what I could do. But there's not much someone like me can actually do. So, I simply thought of helping her. "Emily, here you go." The next day, when lunchtime came, I approached Emily and placed a sandwich on her desk. As expected, Emily looked surprised. "Michael, didn't I say Emily doesn't eat lunch?" one of Emily's friends asked me. "Yeah, but I want to give it, so it's okay." Emily stared at the sandwich on the desk. "It's from Harrison's Diner, their special club sandwich. Be grateful and eat, Emily. You're a bit too thin." Then, saying that, I returned to my seat. Is it okay? Was it unnatural? Emily talked with her friend for a bit and then said to me, "Thank you," I'll eat it gratefully. She smiled brightly, and I felt a deep relief. Since then, I continued to give Emily a sandwich every day. Soon, everyone in the class knew about it. "Hey, Michael, you like Emily, don't you?" One day, one of my classmates said that to me. It was when I was giving a sandwich to Emily. "What? No." Emily, concerned about me, tried to refute it. She probably understood why I was giving her the sandwiches. But I didn't want her circumstances to be known. Is it a problem? The whole class buzzed at my words. "You're silly, right? If you're trying to impress Emily, there are better things than carbs every day. If you really liked her, you wouldn't do that." The classmate mocked and ridiculed me. But I retorted, "I'm the son of the Harrison Diner. I'm just giving her the sandwiches I think are most valuable." At that, the classmate tried to mock me again, but Emily's friend countered with a solid argument. "It's none of your business, right?" Thanks to that, no one else said anything to me. Emily kept saying, "I feel guilty, and that's enough." But I said, "If you don't eat it, just throw it away," and continued giving her sandwiches until graduation. I thought doing anything more would surely burden Emily, so that was all I felt I could do. Until graduation, no one discovered Emily's family situation. I sometimes worried that my actions were a nuisance, but on graduation day, her words to me, I will never forget your kindness, meant everything. Afterward, I went to culinary school. I got my chef's license and started my journey as a cook, aiming to protect our precious family diner, Harrison Diner. After graduating, I got a job at a traditional American restaurant. There, I learned the basics of American cuisine. I could have joined a family business right away, but my dad was still active. Mom was also working hard alongside Dad. It didn't seem like there was a role for me yet, and Dad's words, "Don't waste the chance to learn," allowed me to acquire skills I wouldn't have learned at home. After working at the restaurant for about 5 years, I returned home. At first, there were clashes with Dad over the differences between the traditional restaurant and our diner. I complained about how the stock was made or got scolded for changing the seasoning on my own. But fundamentally, whether it was the restaurant or our family diner, Dad, Mom, and I were the same. We all just wanted our customers to enjoy delicious food, that's all. This isn't a fancy restaurant. Customers come here for good food, not just fancy stock. I know your stock is tasty, but if it increases costs, we have to change our prices. We have our own way of doing things. Don't compare us to others. That's not why I told you to learn, Dad said. These words made me reflect deeply. Without realizing it, I had been comparing our diner to the restaurant. I was trying to change what was good about our place. Sorry, I was wrong, I apologized. Dad silently accepted my apology. Seeing this, Mom just quietly smiled, looking pleased. From then on, I saw Dad as my master and learned cooking from him. Of course, my experience in the restaurant wasn't wasted. I learned to make dishes using stock ingredients and to add vegetable scraps to the stock, among other things. The stock has more depth now, Dad acknowledged. We became partners in protecting Harrison Diner. But those days didn't last long. Though we were in a prime location near the station, the competition was fierce. Just about 2 years ago, a fast food chain opened, and about a year ago, a family-style restaurant. The arrival of these two competitors clearly dealt a major blow to our business. Office workers preferred the quick service of the family-style restaurant, and students liked the hearty meat and fried food of the fast food chain. To adapt, we introduced quick-serve pasta and started offering takeout, including fried food combos aimed at students. However, we couldn't compete with the chain stores that offered cheaper meals due to their bulk purchasing power. This diner, where I grew up since I was little. As I grew older, I worked alongside Dad, trying various strategies to keep it going. But the number of customers dwindled, and we had many days that felt like we were closed even when we were open. Our regulars and friends who occasionally visited would say, "Don't give up, and keep going," but it was hard to know what more we could do. That day, we had no customers at all. The diner was eerily quiet during lunchtime. "Maybe we should close the diner," I said that, and Dad responded, "Yeah, I think so. We've reached our limit." His voice, resigned and sad, echoed in my heart, and Mom just looked down. I felt like crying seeing the two of them like that. "Sorry, I know, you did your best, but sometimes things just end, no matter what." Dad patted my shoulder. He was probably more inclined to cry than I was. The silence was broken by the sound of the door opening. We instinctively looked up. "Hello," I said brightly, as if to blow away the heavy air from earlier. Even if we were closing, I wanted to cherish every customer until the very end. "Hello, how are you?" echoed Dad and Mom, also brightening up. The person who entered wasn't a regular. She was a slender, beautiful woman I didn't recognize. "Please, have a seat here," Mom offered. As she removed her sunglasses, the woman said, "No, I'm not here for a meal." Dad, Mom, and I froze at her words. Then, The woman looked at me and smiled. I'd like to order lunch for the next 10 years. Is that possible? Yeah, I blurted out, surprised. Both of my parents were equally stunned by this unexpected order. Then, the woman chuckled at our reaction. Is 10 years too short? How about 30 years? She joked with a mischievous smile. That smile triggered a memory in me. Hee, it's been a while, Michael. It was her. I stepped forward. Emily, is that you? Wow, it's been so long. Yes, the beautiful woman was Emily. The same classmate I used to give sandwiches to in high school. The unexpected reunion filled me with joy. Mom, make some coffee. Come on, have a seat, I urged, but Emily laughed. I'm not here for a meal. I wanted to order some lunch. I tilted my head in confusion. While Mom prepared the coffee, we sat facing each other at the table. What do you mean? And what are you up to now? Are you doing well? I asked, and Emily replied. You didn't know. I'm kind of a celebrity now. A celebrity. Emily began her story. About her life after graduating from high school. Apparently, she was introduced to a cooking class by a senior at the company where she worked as an office clerk. The class focused on nutritious and budget-friendly cooking. Being new, the class offered her a spot as a monitor. Concerned about her own pale complexion, which I had pointed out, and now constantly worrying about her siblings' health, Emily was drawn to the class's focus on nutritious and budget-friendly cooking. Emily began arranging the recipes she learned in her cooking class and sharing them on social media. Of course, she knew there were people who couldn't afford to attend cooking classes. So, she thought that by sharing her knowledge, she could help someone. Her teacher was pleased with the promotion and happily allowed her to continue. As a result, Emily's social media followers rapidly increased. This led to a book deal with a publisher, where she co-authored a recipe book with her cooking teacher. Well, that's amazing, I said, smiling. I was genuinely happy for her. It seems like Emily's success is telling me that what I did was not a mistake. Well, it might be a bit of pride on my part. And now, I'm a YouTuber and a culinary researcher, doing my own broadcasts, she added. A YouTuber? I exclaimed, surprised, and Emily laughed. Is it that surprising? The idea of being a YouTuber often implies being quite famous. It made sense when Emily mentioned she was somewhat of a celebrity. She seemed like someone from a different world. That made her reason for being here even more puzzling. She must have sensed my confusion and explained. Emily said, Actually, a girl from our class, who I was close with, told me that Harrison Diner was going through tough times. I wanted to see if there was anything I could do, so I came today. I see. Thank you, I said, expressing my gratitude. Emily then said, I should be the one thanking you. You don't know how much you helped me back then. It wasn't just the sandwiches, but also your thoughtfulness and kindness. I looked up at her. The person I am today is because of you, Michael. You pointed out my pale complexion and provided those sandwiches from here. So, for this diner, I'll order for 10 years, 20 years, however long it takes. Now it's my turn to help you. Tears welled up in my eyes. Thank you, I managed to say, and she just smiled happily. I'll deliver lunch every day, I promised. Could you also make them for my brother and sister? They need lunch for school every day, she asked. Tears streamed down my face as I repeatedly nodded at her words. After that, Emily and I kept in regular contact. It wasn't just about the lunch. I didn't want to let this opportunity Emily gave me go to waste. Swallowing my pride, I asked Emily to teach me about cooking. I can't let pride waste an opportunity to learn, I thought. That was something Dad had told me after I graduated from culinary school. We started focusing on budget-friendly cooking to cut costs and creating nutritious meals to differentiate from other eateries. This approach attracted a younger clientele and, thanks to social media, brought in customers of all ages. Our diner regained its bustling atmosphere, and our business stabilized. Emily promoted Harrison Diner's secret recipes on her YouTube channel, which also brought us great publicity. We built a new friendship, supporting and being supported by each other. One day, while chatting, I said to Emily, "Hey, why don't you come and eat here with your brother and sister? You've been having our lunch, but you've never visited the diner, right? Your mom is welcome too." Emily was delighted by my invitation. Back in high school, I had once suggested, "Bring your brother and sister along." But at that time, Emily declined, saying she couldn't afford it. Of course, I never intended to charge her then or now. I just wanted to make her happy. On the day of closing, I opened the diner and cooked for the 4 of them. "What would you like to order?" I asked. They looked at each other and then said, "Some sandwiches, please." Sandwiches? I was taken aback. Sandwiches weren't on the menu. Although I used to boast about Harrison Diner's special sandwiches, those were just something Mom made. "I really wanted my mom, brother, and sister to taste your family's sandwiches," Emily said. To her, those sandwiches were something special. I smiled and served them a simple meal of sandwiches, soup, and salad. Watching them happily savoring the food was incredibly fulfilling. Afterward, Emily's brother and sister left with their mother for their evening classes. They thanked me, looking happy, which I appreciated greatly. Left alone, Emily offered to help with the dishes, but I declined. It was my job, after all. "It was really delicious. Thank you for making it again," she said. Well, back then, it was either Mom or me who made them, but actually, it was mostly Mom, I confessed. "I knew it. There were times when they were a bit different," she laughed. "Really? Sorry, that must have been me." As I hurriedly apologized, Emily shook her head, laughing. "No, I was happy, and even when they teased you about liking me, you sacrificed yourself to make it easier for me, when in fact, I was the one who liked you." Really? I was stunned as Emily blushed slightly. I looked at her, flustered, as she continued. "I want to be there for you, Michael, to support you." I nodded at her words and said, "And I want to be someone who can help you whenever you need it." Eventually, Emily and I went from being friends to lovers and got married. Years later, Harrison Diner and Emily's YouTube channel are still very popular. Emily has gained a little weight. She seems self-conscious about it, but when I tell her, "You're the most beautiful now," she smiles happily. I have memories that I can't forget, no matter how hard I try, or rather, memories I don't want to forget. Looking back, it seems like a dream, but it was undoubtedly real. I had a wife whom I married when I was 25. I got a job at a male-dominated IT company right after graduation, and a friend introduced me to her, as I had no opportunities to meet someone. Her name was Emily. Emily, with her kind and encompassing nature, and I, impulsive and reckless, were complete opposites, which is probably why we were drawn to each other. After dating for 2 years, I proposed, and we got married. Emily worked at a pet store with a shifting schedule, which didn't align well with my weekends off, but we managed to share household chores and initially got along well. However, after about 3 years, our relationship gradually deteriorated. As I progressed into my late 20s and gained more experience, I was increasingly entrusted with more responsible tasks at work. This was something I was very happy about, but I believe it also put a significant amount of stress on me, both mentally and physically. From the onset of our marriage, Emily was in charge of preparing meals and cleaning areas like the kitchen, living room, hallway, and entrance. I was responsible for cleaning the areas outside of the kitchen, including the bathroom. We would also take care of other chores as needed or whoever noticed them first. Of course, there were days when we were unable to complete our tasks, and we were flexible about it, but during this time, I found myself increasingly unable to keep up with my share of the chores. Then, one day, when I returned from work on the last train, Emily had just gotten home and spread some ready-made dishes on the table. "Is this dinner for tonight?" I asked, and Emily, looking apologetic, replied, "Yeah, sorry. I was tired and it got late today, so I bought these from the supermarket." She then heated my portion in the microwave, transferred it to a plate, and handed it to me. I had already eaten ready meals for lunch and was hoping for a proper meal at night. Lost in these thoughts, I wasn't paying attention to what Emily was saying. Then I interrupted her. "Could you run the bath?" Emily looked surprised and momentarily frozen. It was my task to run the bath, so her reaction was understandable. That's what I thought at the time. "I'm tired from working consecutive days. Could you do it for me?" Upon hearing this, Emily said okay and went to run the bath. This kind of situation continued day after day. I didn't know much about the busy season at the pet shop, but Emily seemed to be working harder than ever before, often getting home late and unable to prepare proper dinners. After about 2 weeks of this, I finally spoke up. "Lately, you've been slacking off a bit, haven't you?" That day, I got home around 10 p.m., earlier than usual, but Emily was lying on the sofa and hadn't prepared dinner. "Sorry, I got ready meals for today," she said apologetically, but my frustration didn't ease. "I'm busy too, you know. But if we don't do what we need to, we can't keep our life together. Let's try to do our part, all right?" Even though I said that, Emily only replied with "I'm sorry," and after that, she hardly ever prepared meals anymore. I started to feel increasingly irritated with Emily. Since my job got busier, I'd come home, eat, take a bath, and go straight to bed, resulting in minimal conversation, but by then, I hardly wanted to speak to her at all. "Welcome back. Listen, Emily," perhaps trying to reconcile, kept trying to talk to me, but I kept avoiding her by saying I'm tired. 2 months passed like this. It was ridiculous, living together as a couple yet avoiding each other. Looking back, I realized that maybe I was venting my work stress on Emily. That's why I felt I deserved the punishment that came. On a rainy day in summer, when I got home around 11 p.m., Emily was nowhere to be found. I wondered if she hadn't returned from work yet. With that thought, I didn't bother to look for Emily and simply collapsed into bed to sleep. It wasn't until the next morning that I noticed something was off. It was when the sunlight lit up the room. The room seemed unusually tidy. Curious, I opened a closet and found that all of Emily's clothes were gone. Checking other drawers, I saw that her makeup and other personal items were also completely removed. I went to the living room to check for a note, but there was nothing. Had she left because she was fed up with our constant arguing? Thinking this, I called Emily's cell phone. However, all I heard was a cold, automated voice saying, "This phone number is currently not in use." And just like that, my wife, Emily, had suddenly disappeared. I deeply regretted my recent behavior. Since I too had occasionally shirked my share of the chores due to being busy, I should have been understanding and said, "It happens to the best of us." I should have embraced Emily's attempts at reconciliation instead of pushing her away. I should have faced our issues together. It's true, you often only realize these things once you've lost them. But still, I thought, maybe she's just angry and will come back someday. When she does, I'll apologize properly. I was still naive at that point. A month passed since Emily disappeared. My busy work schedule finally slowed down, and I had more idle time than usual. This situation led to me spending more time than ever thinking about Emily, and I was haunted by the anxiety that she might not return. Then, in my mailbox, I found an envelope without a name on it. Since there was no stamp, it was clear that it had been delivered directly. After I got home, I opened the envelope to find something shocking inside. A divorce petition. For a moment, I thought it might be some kind of prank, but there was already Emily's signature on one side. It was unmistakably Emily's handwriting. I searched the envelope for anything else, but there was nothing. Why? How could this happen? My behavior had hurt Emily so much that she wanted a divorce. But I wished she had at least told me face to face. The idea that everything would end without any real communication, just with a single piece of paper, was unbearably frustrating. I had only visited Emily's family home once, far away, and didn't even remember the address or phone number. Seeing how the letter was delivered directly, without any chance of tracking through a postmark, it was clear that Emily didn't want to see me. The thought that I had driven away someone I once loved so deeply was incredibly painful. But there was no way to persuade her anymore. For months, I couldn't bring myself to sign the divorce papers, but when Emily didn't return even on our 5th wedding anniversary, I finally accepted her decision. I signed and submitted the divorce petition. I never thought that I would be back at this place where we had once happily submitted our marriage registration, only 5 years later. Tears naturally fell from my eyes. 3 years have passed since then. I still hadn't been able to give up on seeing Emily again, and have told mutual friends to let me know if they hear anything about her. I even visited her hometown in Nebraska, but still couldn't find where she was. During this time, I heard from a friend living in California that they had seen Emily. I thought she might not want to see my face anymore. I thought about it, but I knew I couldn't move on without seeing her and hearing her true feelings. And I desperately wanted the chance to apologize. If I became a burden, I decided I would leave immediately. With that in mind, I headed to California. Of course, it wasn't easy to find someone in a crowded city like California. I spent a whole day wandering around the station where my friend's friend had seen her. It feels like I'm stalking her. Just as I was coming to my senses, wondering if I should go back, feeling disheartened, a familiar face passed by right in front of me. She didn't seem to notice me, but it was definitely Emily. There was no mistaking it. Seeing Emily for the first time in 3 years, I almost broke down in tears, but I restrained myself, given the crowd. Emily seemed to be looking around for someone, and then her face lit up with joy. She found her mother and a little boy who ran up to her, exclaiming, "Mommy." The boy, hugging Emily, said cheerfully, "Grandma bought me a toy." "That's great. Did you say thank you?" Emily asked the boy with a gentle, maternal smile I hadn't seen before, lifting him up in her arms. Emily, had she remarried? All this time, I had clung to the selfish hope of meeting her again, apologizing, and perhaps starting over. I had never imagined that Emily could have remarried and started a new life. Realizing this, I knew there was no point in meeting her. Why disturb her happiness by bringing up painful memories? There was no place for me in her life anymore. I remembered living with Emily but couldn't recall the last time I saw her smile like that. If she looked so happy now, I had to be glad for her. But part of me wished I had been the one to make her smile like that. No matter how much I regretted my past mistakes, I couldn't turn back time. As tears threatened to spill, I turned away from Emily and her family, heading toward the station restroom. That's when. "May I have a moment with you?" When I was called from behind and turned around, there stood Emily's mother. There was no sign of Emily or the little boy next to her, leaving me with a mix of relief and disappointment. "You are Nate, right?" she asked, recognizing me. "It's been a while," I replied. Emily's mother suggested we talk at a nearby cafe. As soon as we sat down, she apologized. "I'm sorry for what my daughter did 3 years ago." "No, I'm the one who should apologize for making Emily suffer," I said. I had so many questions. Why did Emily leave without a word? How is she living now? Was that boy really her child? But it felt intrusive to ask. Then Emily's mother asked, "Why are you here today?" But I couldn't immediately answer her question. I was worried that it might seem strange, even creepy, that I had come all the way to California to seek out Emily after we had separated 3 years ago. Yet, if I really wanted to see Emily, should I be honest about it? Once again, I found myself in a dilemma. Then, Emily's mother gently asked, "Did you come to see Emily?" Finally, I admitted, yes, I wanted to talk to her again, to apologize. Then, Emily's mother said something surprising. "Please, meet with Emily." Really, I thought for sure I would be rejected, thinking she had moved on to a new path in life. "But you need to do this, so you can both move forward," she said. Those words brought me both happiness and a twinge of pain. It felt as though she was saying she wanted her daughter to settle the past and find happiness in her new life. Eventually, Emily's mother said she would talk to Emily, and we arranged to meet at this cafe the next day at 2 p.m. I was happy to see Emily, whom I had longed to meet, but the thought that this might be the last time made me feel somewhat sad. The next day, as I waited at the promised place, Emily arrived. "It's been a while," she said, sitting down without looking at me. Maybe she really didn't want to see me. I knew that much since the moment she initiated the divorce. Determined not to have regrets, I decided to express my feelings. "Thank you for coming today. Since the divorce, no, since you left, I've been full of regret. I was so wrapped up in my own pain. I never tried to understand your feelings. I think that only made things harder for you. I'm truly, truly sorry. I've wanted to apologize for so long." I apologized to her. "Wait, look at me. I'm the one who should apologize for leaving silently. I didn't have the courage to confront the situation." Emily then shared her feelings from that time. We both became busy with work, and I knew we were drifting apart. I was probably just as self-absorbed. I had expected Emily to be more angry, so her calm demeanor surprised me. But that meant this was all in the past for her. In Emily's mind, it was a closed chapter. I realized that I was the only one who saw great significance in this reunion. As I thought this, back then, I was feeling unwell. This was news to me. I mentioned it a few times, but you seemed so busy. You probably don't remember. True to her words, I didn't recall at all. So, I couldn't prepare meals properly, and I just felt so down, thinking you were fed up with me. Hearing this, I remembered how Emily often lay down, unable to cook meals every day. "I'm sorry for not noticing. Are you okay now? Was it an illness?" Caught up in my own work stress, I hadn't even noticed Emily's health issues. I was the worst husband. That's why she divorced me. It wasn't an illness. I was pregnant. It took a while for my brain to process her words. "What?" That was all I could muster, sounding foolishly surprised. "It was your child," Emily said, tears welling up in her eyes. Really? Still shocked, I watched as Emily, tearfully, continued her story. "When I felt something was wrong, I went to the hospital and found out I was pregnant. I was so happy. I thought maybe this could bring us back to how we used to be, that this child could be the angel to reconnect us. I wanted to tell you as soon as possible and tried many times, but we never seemed to have a moment to talk properly. It felt like all the puzzle pieces were falling into place." Emily's ill health and her attempts to talk to me were all because she was pregnant with my child. Then I started feeling very alone. I wondered if you would be happy about the child, if I could be a good mother. I got scared of everything and talked to my mom. Initially, I didn't intend to leave. I just planned to stay at my parents' house for a few days, but I became too afraid to tack things out with you. I ran away. I'm so sorry for keeping silent about something so important all this time." Emily apologized again. "And the child?" I asked nervously. "It's a boy. He's 3 now and growing up healthy," she replied. "Was he the one with you at the station yesterday?" I think my voice was trembling. "Yes, that's right," Emily replied. Upon hearing her words, tears uncontrollably started flowing from my eyes. The image of that child, who had clung to Emily calling her mommy, was still vivid in my mind. That was my child. Before I knew it, I was holding Emily's hand. And without being able to hold back, I said, "Thank you." Hearing that, Emily also started crying. "I'm sorry for not realizing the pain you went through for our child and for behaving terribly. I was selfish, truly sorry. But I've always wanted to tell you this. If possible, if you can forgive me, I want to live with you again. I want to be the father of our child. Can you give me another chance?" The wait for Emily's response felt incredibly long. But then, Emily squeezed my hand back and said, "That's my line. Thank you." Afterward, Emily took me to her cart home. Our son, Isaac, didn't act shy at all despite meeting me for the first time. "Dad, did you come from far away?" he asked, hugging me happily. Apparently, Emily had explained to Isaac, who had started to question why he didn't have a father like other families at kindergarten, that Dad is away on a long trip. Isaac even said, "Mom told me, Dad is kind and funny." Knowing that Emily and Isaac had kept my presence alive in their lives made me incredibly happy. Later, I returned to the headquarters and arranged to transfer to the California branch starting next spring. Until then, I would visit them by plane on weekends, but considering the 3 years we missed, it felt like a short wait. Soon, I believe, living a life with Emily and Isaac will feel normal again. But I will never forget that such an ordinary life is not something to take for granted. Having once fallen apart, I believe we are now bound by a stronger bond, and I start walking with my family again. Someone help me. As soon as our eyes met, I could tell the college girl was asking for help. And then, I ended up helping her and being late for an important business meeting. "This means you're off the fast track now, serves you right." My boss had a smile on his face. "I, Lucas, have been better at studying than most since I was a child. I don't remember ever being stuck with my studies, and my grades were always at the top. When I entered middle school, my friends would come up to me every time there was an exam and say, 'Teach me how to study.' Of course, I never turned them down. My mother always told me, 'Cherish your friends.' In fact, that's all she ever said. My father never once told me to study. Perhaps, growing up in such a home environment allowed me to thrive and excel academically. Anyway, I graduated from middle and high school with excellent grades. Afterward, I graduated from a prestigious university and joined a company considered top tier by society. People often told me I was on the fast track, and even as a new employee, I was entrusted with significant responsibilities because I was seen as a rising star. Among my peers, many were envious of me. But of course, there were also those who were jealous. For example, my boss, John, was one of them. Whether or not he's truly jealous of me, there's no doubt that he sees me as an enemy. John would call me out for every little thing, constantly reprimanding me. He criticized things like outdated documents or typos in emails, essentially nitpicking over trivial matters. Honestly, it was troubling and sometimes hindered my work. Still, I couldn't complain directly to John, because he was the right hand of the executive vice president, Mr. Baker. John always followed Mr. Baker around and even accompanied him on his golf outings on weekends. He even went to the extent of driving Mr. Baker to and from lunch in his own car. He was always showing off his connection with Mr. Baker to everyone around. And he would use that connection to act boldly towards his subordinates. Whenever I complained, John would immediately threaten me with, "I'll tell Mr. Baker on you." Needless to say, he never used words like fired or demoted directly. He would just insinuate it, effectively silencing anyone. While silencing his subordinates, John was incredibly weak towards his boss. When the department head, George, said, "Let's go out for drinks today," John would cheerfully reply, "Yes, yes, I'd be delighted to join," and follow along easily. He behaved the same way towards senior managers and division chiefs. In other words, he would flatter those above him in power and dominate those below him to ensure they couldn't oppose him. He was such a troublesome and outdated person. That's why no one in the same department dared to oppose him. In the end, all I could do was use John as a negative example and vow to become a better boss when I climbed the ladder. For now, if I did my job without any mistakes, he wouldn't have any grounds to complain. Thinking this, I was extremely careful with my daily work. All right, finished with today's work. John, please check this. This was when I submitted documents that I had carefully checked as usual. John frowned. I checked everything thoroughly, so there shouldn't be any mistakes with the characters or numbers. Why the frown, then? As I was thinking this, John let out a sigh and said, "Lucas, you haven't made any mistakes recently. What's up?" "I'm about to be promoted to senior staff, and I've had your guidance, John." "Is that so? Then, I have another good job for you. Be at the front of the company at 7 a.m. tomorrow." 7 a.m. Why is that? "It's for a golf outing." John said this to me with a sly grin. When I heard more about it, it turns out that our client, President Johnson, is a fan of golf. Mr. Baker hit it off talking about golf, and they quickly made plans to go together. However, just Mr. Baker and John alone might not make for the most lively outing. So, it seems they've decided to bring John and one other person along. Anyone is fine to bring along, but according to Mr. Baker, beginners take too much time, so they are out of the question. That's when John thought of me, since I was in the golf club during my school days. Even though it's an invitation from John, if it involves Mr. Baker and our client Mr. Johnson, it's a business engagement, which is a serious matter. There was no way a mere employee like me could refuse. Reluctantly, I agreed to go to the business golf outing. And the next day, I headed to the station earlier than usual to catch the train. We were supposed to travel from the company to the golf course in John's car. Moreover, Mr. Baker was supposed to provide the golf clubs and other equipment. So, all I had to do was make sure I wasn't late to the office. It should have been that simple, yet I encountered some bad luck. The train I boarded was packed with commuters, a typical rush hour scene. It wasn't so crowded that I couldn't move at all, but it was uncomfortable enough to make me miss the trains I usually take. As I was thinking that I should have taken a taxi to the office, I happened to look up. That's when I noticed a college girl sitting in the seat in front of me. "What's wrong? You seem bothered by something." Upon closer inspection, next to the college girl, who looked annoyed, was a middle-aged man who appeared to be asleep. He looked like a company employee, half drunk from the morning, leaning on the college girl's shoulder. Moreover, his mouth was slightly open, and with his crossed arms and widely spread legs, he seemed to be subtly touching the college girl. Is this guy pretending to be asleep? I watched closely, but the college girl, out of fear, seemed unable to stand up. Should I help her? As I was contemplating, the college girl, noticing my gaze, looked up at me. To me, her look seemed to be pleading for help. I nodded slightly to the college girl. Understanding my intention, she nodded back. At that moment, I grabbed the college girl's arm and briskly helped her to stand her. Ouch! As the college girl suddenly stood up, the middle-aged man who had been leaning on her fell onto the train seat with a thud. Simultaneously, a chuckle spread among the surrounding passengers. "Are you okay?" While addressing the middle-aged man, I maneuvered the college girl behind me to shield her. "What the hell are you doing?" The man glared at me as he stood up. Then, he fiercely punched me in the face. "What are you doing hitting me all of a sudden?" "Shut up." The middle-aged man swung at me again, attempting to hit me. At that moment, I calmly grabbed his arm and declared, "This is assault. I'm calling the police." While saying that, I pushed the middle-aged man to the floor, still holding onto his arm. Thanks to the help of some salarymen around who understood the situation, we managed to subdue the middle-aged man without much trouble. After that, I got off at the next station with the conductor that another passenger had called to the scene. I had to go to the railway police office inside the station to explain what had happened. In the station office, not only was I questioned about the incident, but I also received treatment for the cheek that the middle-aged man had punched. While I was dealing with this, the college girl I helped came over to me. "My name is Emily. Thank you so much for your help. I'd like to offer you something in return." "No, it's fine. But you're a college student, right? Don't you need to go?" "Yes. I just wanted to get an early start on my report, so I'm okay. But it's almost 7 a.m. What about your work?" "I have a golf outing." "Wait, it's already 7 a.m. I have to go." Realizing the time after Emily mentioned it, I saw I had only a few minutes left until the 7 a.m. meeting. I rushed out of the station office. "Wait, I want to give you something in return." "Your gratitude is enough. Take care." I shouted back and ran at full speed to the platform. I jumped onto the arriving train without a second thought. "I hope I make it. I hope I make it." I wished this on the train, but of course, there was no chance of making it on time. Eventually, I arrived at the meeting spot about 30 minutes late. "You're late, Lucas. What were you doing?" John approached me with a forced smile. He didn't raise his voice because of Mr. Baker, but it was clear he was angry. "Your face is swollen. Did you try to pick up a girl and get punched?" "I was helping a college girl who was being harassed on the train, and I got punched." "What? You helped a college girl? Do you think that excuse will fly? Don't lie so blatantly," John yelled. However, Mr. Baker and the client, Mr. Johnson, had the opposite reaction. "Wow, your employee is quite brave and commendable. Helping a harassed college girl isn't something anyone can easily do." Mr. Johnson praised me. "He's one of our rising stars, talented, and definitely someone to watch. I'm envious. I'd like to have someone like him in my company." "We won't let him go. Lucas, was it? Anyway, you did a good thing. Well done." Mr. Johnson and Mr. Baker laughed. Seeing this, John could only offer a forced smile. However, once Mr. Baker and Mr. Johnson got into the car, John came over and whispered, "It's because a guy like you tried to show off in front of a girl that you got what you deserved. You're lucky that's all that happened," and sneered at me. But John seemed to be in a good mood all day, perhaps pleased by my injury. His cheering was spirited, and I believe he fully demonstrated his skills as a sycophant. Perhaps thanks to that, both Mr. Baker and Mr. Johnson seemed to be enjoying their golf game in high spirits. Meanwhile, after stumbling at the start, I was desperate to make up for it. I got so carried away that I forgot to hold back and played my best. As a result, I ended up scoring better than Mr. Baker and the others. While they praised me, John later said behind my back, "You should at least know to hold back. This is the worst impression. But don't worry. You're off the fast track now. Serves you right." Excessive deference can be disrespectful. But this was definitely a mistake. While I regretted my actions, I headed home for the day. However, that business golf outing had little impact on my life. I wasn't particularly targeted by Mr. Baker, nor did I receive any complaints from Mr. Johnson. In fact, Mr. Johnson remembered me and even requested my involvement a few times. Half a year passed without knowing whether I had been taken off the fast track or not. As the new term arrived, our company was also set to welcome new employees. Suddenly, John instructed me to give a speech as the employee representative. If I had been given prior notice, I would have been confident in handling it. But it seemed John wanted to see me fail, as he informed me on that day. Being told to give a speech so suddenly, I hadn't prepared anything. "What are you talking about? I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself after messing up the business golf. Don't you get it? If that's the case, at least give me a heads up the day before." "What? Do you have a complaint?" "No." "Well, do your best. The company's image depends on your speech. It's a big responsibility. There will be coverage by the company newsletter, and if you mess up your speech, you might get fired." In the hallway of the entrance ceremony venue, John patted my shoulder, adding pressure. So you're always nitpicking like this. That explains the pressure at the job interviews." Surprised by the voice coming from behind, we turned around. There stood a young woman with her arms crossed and cheeks puffed in annoyance. "Who are you?" John approached the woman. "Just as you see, I'm a new employee." The woman retorted firmly. I recognized the woman and couldn't help but stare intently at her. Noticing my gaze, she turned towards me. At that moment, the woman pointed at me and exclaimed loudly, "Oh, it's you, the guy from that time. Hi. Long time no see. So you work here. By the way, is your face okay? Any scars left?" As she spoke, she reached out to touch my cheek. That's when I finally remembered her. The college girl from the train. "Yes, remember me. I'm the college girl you helped that time." The woman was Emily, the college girl I had helped on the train. Dressed in a suit, she looked completely different. I remembered she seemed scared of the man at that time, but now she seemed unbothered by John and me, which was reassuring. As I thought this, John smirked and said, "Oh, so you were drooling over the new employees." "What, old man, got a problem?" Emily snapped back at John. "It's nothing special. In our world, being quick with your tasks is expected, but being quick to make the moves on girls and not work isn't something to be praised for." "Enough already, old man. Insulting him isn't going to make you look any better." "What did you say? Besides, he's my prince, and I won't forgive you if you insult him any further." "Presumptuous little girl. Don't you know how to speak to your boss?" "You're the boss. If you're the boss, then stop putting down your subordinates and strive to be someone your team can trust." Silence. Silence. How did a naive girl like you even get hired? Was it through connections, or did you use your womanly charms? John leered at Emily with a lascivious grin, licking his lips. Feeling a chill, Emily hid behind me. That's when it happened. A low voice echoed from the shadows of the corridor. "I'm sorry, but I believe a company should only have competent individuals, even if it involves someone close. I have no intention of showing leniency." Everyone turned towards the source of the voice. There stood Mr. Baker, with a displeased expression. "Mr. Baker." John straightened up instantly. At the same moment, Emily ran towards Mr. Baker. "Dad." "Emily, here you are." Mr. Baker stroked Emily's head as she ran to him. "Dad, what?" John's eyes darted around in confusion. His face contorted, then quickly turned pale. Overwhelmed with surprise, I could only watch silently as the events unfolded. Then, Mr. Baker approached me and said, "The woman you helped during golf was my daughter Emily, wasn't it?" "Yes, it seems so. I was told by Emily about it that night, and seeing your swollen cheek, I thought it might be you, but I couldn't bring Emily to the office. And while I was contemplating, much time had passed. I'm truly sorry for the delayed gratitude. Thank you for helping my daughter." Mr. Baker expressed his gratitude towards me. I awkwardly responded to Mr. Baker's thanks. "No, it's okay. I just did what anyone would do. We are so grateful for your help." Mr. Baker expressed his gratitude to me once again. Right after that, Mr. Baker's expression changed completely as he turned to face John. Glaring sharply at John, he spoke in a low, almost threatening voice. "John, for someone who's always following me around, you seem to be incapable of even the most basic aspects of managing your subordinates, aren't you?" "Mr. Baker, that's, well, it seems you lack the ability to learn, so it can't be helped." "What do you mean?" "Staying in the position of manager with your level of learning ability is pointless, so let's transfer you to a department where you can learn how to interact with people better." "A transfer? It's not a demotion. You're not being removed from the path to promotion, because you'll be transferred to a department where you have a significant responsibility as a manager." Mr. Baker patted Mr. Thompson on the shoulder with a thud. It was clear what he meant. John just collapsed on the spot. "Well, that means there will be an open spot in your department. In other words, it's your turn to be promoted. Just make sure not to mess up your speech, Lucas." "Yes, sir. I'm counting on you, then." Mr. Baker patted my shoulder and then left. Left behind, Emily gazed at me with sparkling eyes and murmured, "You're really being counted on, aren't you, big brother?" "Well, maybe so." "Amazing. And the induction ceremony speech is like representing all the employees, right? You really are a prince. Amazing. So amazing." Emily was jumping up and down, bubbling with excitement like a child. Just watching her made me feel inexplicably nervous. "Oh, right. I need to find a perfect spot to take pictures with my phone. See you ahead." Don't expect too much from me. It just makes me more nervous. I let out a wry smile as I watched Emily dash off. In the end, the induction ceremony concluded without a hitch. I was curious about Emily, who was at the front row taking photos of the ceremony, but my speech also went smoothly. Right after the ceremony, Mr. Thompson was called to the HR department and was immediately assigned to be in charge of the supply warehouse. Moreover, it seems he was nominated as the manager of the warehouse. Though the department and title sound respectable, in simple terms, it was just a security guard role. It was a quiet position replacing a retired security guard. On the other hand, in my department where the manager was absent, Mike, the section chief, got promoted to manager. I was also promoted from chief to section chief. And my first task in this new role was to train Emily. Apparently, this was a direct order from Mr. Baker, and the new manager, Mike, related to me with a wry smile. This is almost like an abuse of authority. Isn't this nepotism? Because, as a section chief, you'll work with various employees. You'll have more opportunities to interact with female employees. Just the thought of my prince working closely with other women. Ugh. Emily pouted as she spoke. Seeing her sulk like a child, I sighed and responded, "It can't be helped. It's work after all." "No way, absolutely not, because you're my prince." "Hey, about that, calling me prince, are you planning to make that stick? Everyone in our department has started teasing me, calling me prince." I mentioned it in a low voice, but I couldn't deny the feeling that it was too late. Emily looked puzzled, and the people around us were smirking while listening to our conversation. Several weeks later. We were now being treated as a couple in the midst of a workplace romance by everyone around us. Moreover, rumors had spread that our relationship was officially recognized by Mr. Baker. Moreover, my colleagues would even tease me, saying, "You've snagged a catch." When I told this to Emily, she whispered in my ear with a laugh, "It's too late to back out now, isn't it? So, I'm ready whenever you are." Emily said it jokingly, but I'm sure she was also expecting something. I wasn't against the idea either and was ready to make up my mind. So, I responded with this: "Will you become my princess starting today?" It wasn't the best line for proposing a relationship with marriage in mind, but Emily nodded happily, so I think it was fine. I'll make sure to come up with something more clever when I actually propose. I was already thinking about what to say for the proposal, so I wouldn't panic like I did for that speech. That server was seriously incapable and so irritating. Really, she might get away with it because she's just a college student, but that won't cut it in the real world. Moreover, Emily and Julia were really laying into that server earlier. The guys, including myself, were sending them these indescribable looks, but the two of them didn't seem to notice. I was appalled by Emily and Julia's behavior and looked away from them. Then, I turned my gaze towards the server. At least, the server managed to serve a margarita to a customer. However, the next moment, the server collapsed. I immediately rushed over to the server to check her pulse and perform a quick examination. I then asked another nearby server to call an ambulance. Henry and the others watched me in surprise as I did this. A little while later, the ambulance arrived and the server was taken away. As I sighed in relief, Lisa said to me, "Who are you exactly?" "My name is Michael. I'm 32 years old. I have an unremarkable appearance and wear glasses. I seem to be sort of like the stereotypical nerd. Plus, I'm only 5'6" tall and rather short for a man, which doesn't help my looks. Despite all that, I'm a doctor." People who have heard my introduction up to this point might think that my looks don't matter since I'm a doctor. I used to think so too, especially during my student days. Back then, I was negative, lacked confidence, and didn't look great. But there was one thing I was proud of. That was my studies. I was the kind who scored well across all subjects, never getting below 85 on any tests. As a result, in middle school, many of my classmates would ask me for help with math. During those days, I ended up teaching math to quite a few people, but one classmate was notably bad at it. That was Henry. He was a charming, athletic type who was very popular. But no matter how much I taught him, he struggled to grasp math. It's like God gives everyone some sort of flaw. I used to think so, because Henry was that bad at math. But Henry had a great personality. He never pretended to understand something he didn't, and always thanked me after I taught him. I grew to admire his character, which is probably why I was able to patiently teach him math. As a result, our math study sessions continued for a while. Henry and I became good friends, and we've kept in touch even as adults. Interestingly, Henry was one of the reasons I decided to become a doctor. After getting to know him during my student days, I began to see myself more objectively. Adolescent me inevitably compared myself to Henry, highlighting the disparities between us. Henry, being handsome and athletic, would likely have no trouble finding a job or getting by, even without being good at studies. On the other hand, all I had were my studies. I feared that with my current specs, I might not be able to get married in the future. At the time, I was interested in girls, wanted to be popular, and hoped to marry someday. Comparing myself to Henry made me anxious about the future. I realized I had to do something about it, and at that moment, I knew I wanted to get married in the future. It was probably too early to be thinking that far ahead, especially since I didn't even know who I wanted to marry. But for me, at that time, it was a serious concern. From then on, I began aiming to become a doctor. The reason why I chose to be a doctor was because of the ranking of men's occupations women want to marry frequently featured in the media at the time, where doctors consistently ranked high. Looking at those statistics, I thought being a doctor was the only way to go. Moreover, I liked helping people, which made me think that the profession of a doctor might suit me well. Fortunately, my parents supported my ambition to become a doctor. Despite the high cost of medical school, they never objected, which I think was really kind of them. Thus, I smoothly progressed through university, overcame the training period, and became a doctor. I loved my job of saving patients every day, had patients who relied on me, and felt a sense of fulfillment in my work as a doctor. However, my personal life was hardly satisfying at all. So, having become a doctor, I decided to start meeting women. As a newly minted doctor, I turned to dating apps. The reason I chose dating apps over mixer parties was simply because mixers seemed like a high hurdle for me. Somehow, as an adult, I still didn't look great. I lacked the courage to go to mixers, easily imagining being ridiculed by women just for my looks. But dating apps seemed like an easy way to meet women, and I could chat with them before meeting, giving me an idea of what they were like. There were many benefits to using dating apps, making them suitable for a novice in love like me. However, reality was not so kind. After starting with dating apps, I met a few women, but somehow, they all turned out to be quite peculiar. To be specific, some were clearly only after my money, some pretended to be single but were actually married, and there were even scammers. Honestly, even though my stance towards women had significantly improved, I no longer wanted to use dating apps. This was not how I had envisioned my future, but reality spared no effort in tormenting me, almost breaking my spirit. Then, my phone rang. It was a call from Henry. "Hello." "Hey, how are you? Don't you want to go to a mixer?" Despite the sudden invite, I was losing hope in dating apps, so I quickly agreed. "Awesome, thanks, Michael. But there's one thing I need your help with." "What's that?" I asked Henry to make some arrangements for me. On the day of the mixer, Henry told me something shocking. "Actually, I never planned to have a mixer." "What do you mean?" Henry explained everything from the beginning. In short, he ran into Lisa, a middle school classmate, at a client's company. Feeling nostalgic, he struck up a conversation with Lisa, and then two of her colleagues joined in, eventually asking Henry to set up a mixer, leading to this event. So, this mixer was actually organized for those two colleagues. I see. Entering the mixer venue, I took my seat. The mixer was to be held with 3 men and 3 women, 6 people in total. The men included me, Henry, and Henry's junior, Ryan. Ryan seemed like a cute, likable guy who would be popular with the older crowd. Then, the women arrived at the venue. Leading the way were the 2 colleagues, the masterminds behind this mixer. However, upon seeing my face, the 2 colleagues burst out laughing. Although I had anticipated being laughed at for my looks, it still hurt. Lastly, Lisa arrived. She was beautiful in middle school, but seemed even more so now as an adult. Then the mixer began, and everyone started introducing themselves. "I'm Michael. I work as a company employee. I'm looking forward to tonight." In reality, I am a doctor, but for this occasion, I've asked to be introduced as a company employee. The favor I asked of Henry was to present me as a company employee to the women and Henry's junior, Ryan, and to make sure this was communicated before the mixer. Of course, this plan worked perfectly, and no one realized that I am actually a doctor. I resorted to this because of my experiences on dating apps, where it seemed that women were only interested in me for my money, likely because I revealed my profession as a doctor. I didn't want to encounter women who were only after my money, which is why I requested this scheme. For the record, the company I supposedly work for is considered a small to medium enterprise, similar to Henry and Ryan's level. However, perhaps because of this, none of the women seemed particularly interested in my introduction, especially the two rude colleagues, who wouldn't even make eye contact with me. From the moment they arrived, it seemed like Julia was interested in Ryan, and Emily was focused on Henry. I guess it was inevitable that things turned out this way. Only Lisa made an effort to speak to me. "You're Michael, right? I'm Lisa. We were classmates in middle school. Do you remember me?" "Oh, yes, of course, I remember." I was happy that Lisa remembered me, and I was looking forward to reminiscing about the good old days with her, but my hopes were soon shattered. Emily interrupted my conversation with Lisa. "Lisa, you look lame if you talk to someone like that." "Yeah, it's much more beneficial to talk with Ryan or Henry." Lisa seemed confused and didn't know how to respond to Emily and Julia's comments. Henry and Ryan tried to ease the awkward atmosphere by intervening, but even they seemed taken aback by the intensity of Emily and Julia. Feeling like my presence was causing trouble, I quietly headed to the restroom. After finishing up, I was about to return to the table when I heard Emily and Julia's voices nearby. Looking around, I saw them standing in front of the girls' restroom and chatting. Not wanting to be noticed, I hid and ended up eavesdropping on their conversation. I was expecting them to be bad-mouthing me, but the content was surprisingly different. "Lisa really can read the room, can she?" "I know, right? Talking to a loser like Michael is just stupid." "Yes, what's the point of befriending someone having a below-average face and working at a small business?" "Exactly. It's because she's naive like that, she ends up doing our work for us." "Right. If we show a bit of remorse when asking, she ends up doing our tasks in our stead." "Yep, fools can be quite useful tools if you know how to use them." Emily and Julia continued their petty gossip, essentially revealing that they only saw Lisa as a convenient colleague who would do their work for them. The reason Emily organized a mixer was to get closer to Henry, and Julia wanted to connect with Henry's acquaintances. In essence, Lisa was being used by Emily and Julia, both at work and at the mixer. After making sure Emily and Julia had returned to their seats, I slowly made my way back to the table, feeling weighed down by witnessing their toxic behavior. Reaching the table where everyone was waiting, I just wanted to leave, which probably made me drink faster. Then, a young female server, possibly a college student, came to our table with a dish in hand. "Sorry for the wait, here's your margarita pizza." However, everyone at the table seemed puzzled by her words. We didn't order a pizza, so I think you have the wrong table." "Right. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please excuse me." It seems the server had mistakenly brought the dish to our table and quickly moved to another table. I thought the server's nervousness was somewhat endearing, but Emily and Julia seemed annoyed. That server is seriously incapable, and it's irritating. Really, she might get away with it because she's just a college student, but that won't cut it in the real world. Furthermore, Emily and Julia were harshly criticizing the server. The men, including myself, were sending them indescribable looks for their harsh words, but the two of them didn't seem to notice. I was appalled by Emily and Julia's behavior and looked away from them. Then, I turned my gaze towards the server. At least, the server managed to serve a margarita to a customer. However, the next moment, the server collapsed. I immediately rushed over to the server to check her pulse and perform a quick examination. I then asked another nearby server to call an ambulance. Henry and the others were staring at me in surprise. A little while later, the ambulance arrived, and the server was taken away. As I sighed in relief, Lisa said to me, "Who are you exactly?" Actually, I'm a doctor." As I said this, pushing past Lisa, Emily, and Julia barged in. By this point, it was clear from their actions how greedy they were, even without them speaking. I was on the verge of sighing. However, Emily and Julia, unaware of my feelings, approached me with sweet, cloying voices and upturned eyes. "So you were really a doctor? You should have just told us. Were you pretending to be a company employee because Ryan and Henry work at small and medium enterprises? Or well, not only are you smart, but you're also considerate of those around you." Honestly, since Emily and Julia are also 32 years old, their approach felt somewhat pitiful. So I instinctively stepped back from them. The shock of their sudden change in attitude towards me left me speechless. Still, Emily and Julia didn't notice my discomfort and kept pressing closer as I remained silent. I had enough and said to Emily and Julia, "Excuse me, but you were clearly looking down on me just a moment ago, weren't you? And now that you know I'm actually a doctor, you are changing your tune so quickly. Are you even aware of how disrespectful you're being? I find this extremely offensive." I looked at Emily and Julia angrily. I rarely get angry at people unless it's a patient who hasn't followed my advice, worsening their condition. It seems Emily and Julia have a talent for infuriating people. I was trembling with anger. Emily and Julia, not expecting me to say such things or even get angry, were visibly shocked by my reaction. Seeing their response only irritated me further. At this point, I wondered if they were geniuses at making people angry. I sighed involuntarily. Emily, seemingly annoyed by my demeanor, snapped at me. "Don't get cocky just because you're a doctor. Yeah, if you had told us from the start that you were a doctor, we wouldn't have treated you like that. Don't you get it? The ones getting carried away here are you." I'm utterly appalled by your arrogance. What I'm trying to say is that no matter what job the person in front of you has, it's wrong to treat them so terribly. How can you not understand such a fundamental thing? "Michael, there's no point getting worked up over them," said a voice from behind me. Turning around, I saw Henry and Ryan standing there, both glaring at Emily and Julia. That's right. If they were decent people, they wouldn't belittle others like that, Ryan said firmly. It seemed Ryan was also upset after seeing me being hurt by Emily and Julia. With Henry and Ryan by my side, I felt more empowered than before. I felt a surge of energy and warmth in my chest. So, I was able to declare to Emily and Julia, "Let me say this as a doctor, Emily and Julia, it's too late for you. How could you let things get this far?" As I declared this as if it were checkmate, Emily and Julia's anger reached its peak, their faces turning bright red as if they were boiling kettles. "What do you mean it's too late?" "Exactly. We will sue you for threatening us with misdiagnosis and human rights violations. If you really want to sue, go ahead. I have friends who are excellent lawyers, and it's clear to me that I would win against you." Since you seem quite foolish, let me explain. Your characters are flawed. When I said it's too late, I meant that your humanity is beyond saving. Now that I've explained it in detail, do you understand? Do you get it now? And what exactly about our humanity is beyond saving? Yeah, you're getting so worked up just because we make jokes about you a little. How scary. Right. What if he becomes a criminal someday and has a bounty on his head? Exactly. If that happens, we'll just use others to catch him and split the bounty among ourselves. That's brilliant. Well, you can praise me more. Now, Emily and Julia were treating me as if I were a criminal. It's frightening how they immediately reverted to their bad habit of belittling others, even after being called out for it. It seemed like belittling others had become a deeply ingrained part of their daily lives, happening almost unconsciously. I sighed again. Emily and Julia snapped back at me. What? You still have complaints against us? Really? So annoying. Are you some kind of quack doctor? That's so true. Right. As Emily and Julia started to get excited about insulting me, I wondered how many times I had seen this today. I was fed up and extremely irritated by their persistent and unapologetic behavior. So, I shouted louder than before. I have plenty of complaints, and I'm not a quack doctor. My patience has completely run out, so I'm going to say this. Emily and Julia continued to laugh foolishly. Oh, what are you going to say? It must be some quack doctor's diagnosis. How silly. Actually, I've heard you've been passing your work on to Lisa. What are you thinking? What? How do you know about that? Yeah, who are you really? When you were in front of restroom, I overheard you talking about it. I was really surprised then. Hearing this, Emily and Julia's expressions darkened, realizing they were in trouble. Henry and Ryan, who take their work seriously, sent them cold looks, clearly unable to forgive their actions. They both sighed deeply. It's unbelievable. Abandoning the work you were entrusted with by the company and making Lisa do it is not something responsible adults do. Exactly. And then you have the nerve to criticize the server who collapsed, pretending to be upstanding citizens. It's the worst. As Henry and Ryan spoke sternly, Emily and Julia started to act desperately. No, you've got it wrong. We just had some unavoidable matters, and that's why we had to. Yeah, work is about helping each other out, right, Lisa. Julia, seizing the moment, appealed to Lisa, either seeking help from the current predicament or simply trying to deflect the blame, but Lisa's expression was complex. However, Lisa seemed to have made up her mind and said, "Both of you always left your work to me, saying you had matters to attend to, but I knew you were leaving work to me to go to mixers. I'm fully aware that you were using me, so don't underestimate me." Lisa's unexpected statement caused an uproar among everyone present. What? Why did you agree to do their work, knowing they were going to mixers? Yeah, why did you put yourself in such a convenient position for them? Henry and Ryan seemed to have many questions about Lisa's actions and mindset. Emily and Julia, having been exposed for dumping work on Lisa and attending mixers, were trembling with fear. I continued to watch over Lisa. Because I cared about Emily and Julia, that's why. Lisa, thank you. Lisa, you would never betray us. Emily and Julia approached Lisa, saying this. This scene felt familiar, but by now, I had pegged Emily and Julia as the type to cozy up to just about anyone. I wondered if Lisa would just be swayed by them and pretend to reconcile, observing the women. But then, Lisa made a surprising move. "Don't touch me," Lisa said, distancing herself from Emily and Julia, who were trying to get close. Emily and Julia, not expecting this from Lisa, yelled at her. "What do you mean, Lisa? Don't touch you. We were good colleagues, weren't we?" "Good colleagues. Don't make me laugh. I no longer trust you, and I don't want to be close to you anymore. Plus, I'll be a manager next month, so we're not the same anymore. Can you understand that?" "But you said we were important to you." "That's right. Because we were important, you took over our work even knowing we were going to mixers, right?" Learning that Lisa would become a manager next month, Emily and Julia seemed quite panicked. They probably feared that Lisa might expose their misdeeds as a manager, leading to their potential dismissal. They desperately wanted to keep Lisa on their side. But Lisa was unwavering. Still bringing up the past. I began to despise you when I saw how terribly you treated Michael. And given your habit of belittling others, you probably looked down on me too, right? That's not true. Yeah, no. Lisa, not trusting their words, turned to me. Michael, they're lying, aren't they? Yes, Lisa. In front of restroom, Emily and Julia were indeed mocking you. They said you were a convenient tool who would do their work if they just asked, with a bit of guilt because they had unavoidable matters. Hearing my confirmation, Lisa's face turned red with anger. They also said you couldn't read the room for talking to someone like me. I see. Thank you for telling me. Now it was clear that Emily and Julia were mocking Lisa. I took over your work because you seemed to struggle with it, but mostly, I wanted to help you achieve your dream. What dream was that? Emily and Julia dreamed of becoming housewives. They talked about quitting their jobs and becoming housewives every day. So I really wanted to make that happen for them. That's why I didn't get mad when they secretly went to Mixers and took over their work. I see. But there were no signs of them becoming housewives, and after seeing their behavior at today's Mixer, I understood why they couldn't get married. I wish I could get back all the time and effort I spent on them. Lisa glared at Emily and Julia. They seemed at a loss for words or overwhelmed with guilt, hanging their heads. The atmosphere turned heavy, but Henry and Ryan began to chuckle, lightening the mood. What's so funny? In this era where dual-income households are the norm, they wanting to be housewives is a bit unrealistic. It's quite childish for adults their age not to understand that. Right. If they were serious about finding marriage partners, they should have gone to a marriage agency instead of Mixers. Their poor time management just shows how incapable they are at work. Henry and Ryan's harsh words seemed to bring Emily and Julia to tears. Do you understand now why I said you were beyond help? With my final words, the two nodded silently. Later, Emily and Julia were fired from the company. It wasn't just because they had lied about having unavoidable matters and dumped their work on Lisa. The real reason was their inability to kick their bad habits. Even though they stopped dumping work on Lisa, they began burdening their juniors with it. They couldn't forget the sweetness of having others do their work. Despite being warned, they continued to attend Mixers in search of marriage partners. Just like Lisa, their juniors were temporarily exploited by them. Given their nature, Emily and Julia were likely careless and foolish. This is because they were spotted by several colleagues entering a dining establishment with a mixed gender group, which could only have been a Mixer. Upon receiving such damning information about Emily and Julia's misconduct, a dismayed Lisa consulted with the higher-ups, leading to their dismissal. At this point, it was purely a case of reaping what they sowed, so no one offered them words of comfort. As for me, I was able to exchange contact information with Lisa during that Mixer, and we still email each other. Our emails mainly consist of encouraging each other to keep up the good work. Lisa successfully became a manager and seems to be busier with work. But I believe she'll manage just fine given her resilience. Having someone to discuss work with was a refreshing and delightful experience for me, as I'd never had such an opportunity before. Working in society may seem like a constant battle with others, but in reality, it's a longer struggle with oneself. Having someone by my side to offer support and encouragement during these solitary days makes me feel like I can achieve more. This has made me realize that perseverance and earnest can lead to rewarding outcomes.